So if you want to publish your own packages, whether you want to do that publicly or just make them available to use within your own projects, you need to tell Composer about your project and describe your package. We still use the composer.json file. So if we have a look at this project that I have already created, I've made a composer.json, which is a really simplest possible case of describing a package, right? Because I have a source file with a single library in it. So you have to give it a name, and it needs to be made up of two parts. The first part, in this case I've just put my app as a toy example, is the vendor name. You usually find that a project has a bunch of sub-products inside it. So give it a name, you need to have a description. Here's the require block. If you're only including other libraries or frameworks, then you can, often we see composer.json that only has the require in it. Because I'm publishing, I need these extra fields. I need to tell Composer about the auto-loading. When you install a package with Composer, the auto-loading becomes available, and then you just include the file in there. So I need to just say it's PSR4 compatible, and the my app namespace can be found in the src file. So that's all that's going there. You also have to describe the license, which I think is probably a sensible caveat. The documentation on getcomposer.org is super comprehensive for describing all of this stuff, but this is a really nice basic minimum. So I've created this library and I've published it. If you want to submit to Packagist, you can. Its preferred mechanism is to read from a GitHub repository, and you tag your versions with the version numbers. Packagist understands all of that. It's relatively straightforward to do. However, there are a couple of other choices. You can pull direct from a master branch instead of having to wait for a tagged release. So if you're tracking an experimental branch or a bleeding edge branch of somebody's project, you can do that. If you have a change that's merged upstream, you don't have to wait for them to roll a release in order to be able to use Composer to bring in that dependency. You can also bring in packages from other sources. So if you have a look at this other project file that I have here, have a look at my composer.json. I've got a new block in here, which is the repositories. And I have made this repository type VCS. Because my library directory is under source control, it's a Git repository in its own right. You just need a path to it. Could be a GitHub repository, could be on your own work servers, could be a local file system example like this. All you need to do is say it's a VCS repository, it is here, and then Composer will know to look there to find things. This is cool. I mean, most of the well-known projects will come from Packagist, but you can publish your own stuff either by putting it on an internal repo that your build servers and your developers have access to. There's also a Packagist, like a private Packagist alternative called Satis, which lets you give it packages and then you can add that as a repository within your dependent composers.json. Once you do that, and if I run composer install, then it will read my composer.json and then go off and add that repository, find the packages that I asked for, and install them here. Exactly as you would expect, I have composer.lock, I have the vendor directory. If we look in the vendor directory, there is the autoload file. When you use Composer, you state your requirements, you install your requirements, and then anywhere you want to refer to those files, you just require vendor/autoload. So there's the autoload that's going to do that work. If we look in the My App folder, you can see there's my library, and there's just a library.php available inside there. There's my src file. There's library.php. So all of the code is in there, brought into the vendor directory and available for me to use in my application. I didn't touch Packagist with this example. If my library had Packagist dependencies, we could have brought those in as well. But that's just to give you an idea of how to package up your own project to be released onto Packagist onto your own status instance, or just put it somewhere and use it any way you want to. I think as more and more organisations move to having more modular code, even a single application is likely to get broken up and maintained in different ways. And I think Composer can really help us to manage this.